All stories posted on our channel are stories from our subscribers and created by us based on real events we've experienced and witnessed. We post new stories every day for your entertainment. We hope you enjoy them. Thank you. It was late on a Wednesday night. I had just wrapped another exhausting day at work. Deadlines, calls, the same relentless grind. By the time I walked in, dinner had gone cold and my wife, Melissa, was planted on the couch, scrolling her phone like clockwork. I sat down next to her and tried to chat, but her answers were clipped, almost automatic. Yeah, okay, sure. Nothing more. For weeks I'd felt a wall rising between us. We shared a house, but not the closeness. The small touches, the hugs, the easy laughter we used to have, they'd evaporated. Still, part of me wanted to believe it was temporary, that if I reached out again things might heal. So that night I tried one more time. I leaned in, brushed her arm gently and whispered, "Come to bed with me." Not a demand, an invitation. I was just looking for connection, the kind of closeness a married couple should have. She didn't even look up. Her gaze stayed fixed on the phone's glow. Then, without hesitation or care, she said, "Use your hand." At first I thought I'd misheard. I blinked, waiting for her to laugh it off or repeat it, but she didn't. She kept scrolling as if she hadn't spoken the most cutting words a husband could hear from his wife. That line landed harder than any outright insult. It wasn't only rejection, it was contempt. It told me I wasn't worth her time, her touch, or the effort of being present. My chest tightened and my throat went dry. I wanted to yell, to beg, to ask what happened to us. Instead I sat in silence, my pride keeping me from pleading for what should have been natural between us. Inside, though, the quiet screamed. My thoughts raced. I remembered the early days when we couldn't get enough of each other. Nights talking until dawn, kissing, dreaming together. She used to look at me like I was everything. Now I was background noise, someone who covered the bills while she treated me like a stranger. I went to bed that night alone, staring at the ceiling as the fan hummed, while Melissa stayed in the living room, probably glued to her phone or another shallow reality show. The emptiness of that bed told me more about the state of our marriage than any conversation could. And the point isn't just sex. It was what that rejection represented. Respect, partnership, the bond we were supposed to share. Her words showed that bond was fractured and I'd been too blind, too patient, too hopeful to admit it. Lying there, anger mixed with something colder, clarity. I realized love without respect means nothing. That night she might have thought she'd shut me down with one brutal sentence, but in truth she pushed me toward a decision. It was when I stopped seeing her as my partner and started seeing her as she'd become. Someone who treated me like an ATM, a roommate, nothing more. I didn't explode, didn't throw things, didn't confront her then. I went quiet because I knew silence would be my sharpest tool later. That was the breaking point. The night our fragile hope turned into undeniable truth. The night she told me to use my hand, and I decided she'd soon be the one left empty-handed. The next morning I got up early like always. I showered, dressed, and left for work while Melissa slept in. I didn't say much before I left, partly because I didn't trust my voice not to betray the frustration from the night before. Use your hand kept replaying in my head like a bad song you can't get rid of. By the time I came home that evening I'd resolved to keep things calm. No fights, no begging, just routine. Dinner was quiet. She barely asked how my day went, and honestly I didn't bother to give her much either. But while I was clearing the table she casually asked, as if nothing had happened. The night before, "Hey, can you give me some money? I need about $300. I looked up, confused. "For what?" I asked. She shrugged like it didn't matter. "Just things I need." "Don't worry about it." That's when it hit me. Less than a day earlier she dismissed me in the coldest way possible, like I didn't matter as her husband or partner. And now, without a second thought, she treated me like her personal bank. I set the plate down and stared at her. "Melissa, go to work. I'm not your bank." The expression on her face was priceless. Wide eyes, a jaw that tightened, clearly not expecting me to refuse. She'd grown so accustomed to this cycle, reject me when she wanted, ask for money when she wanted, and I'd always give. Not this time. She scoffed and tried to brush it off. "Wow. So now you're going to be stingy. You can't even help your own wife." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how absurd it sounded. Help. Melissa. Helping is mutual. You don't even look at me anymore, and the only time you show energy is when you're asking for cash. Respect goes both ways. She rolled her eyes and muttered under her breath, but I caught it. You're overreacting. That word almost pushed me over the edge, but I stood firm. My voice remained calm, steady, colder than I expected. I'm not overreacting. I'm done being treated like a paycheck with legs. Her mouth opened like she wanted an argument, but nothing came out. She knew I wasn't bluffing. The truth was I'd spoiled her for too long. By always giving without demanding respect, I'd let that imbalance grow. She thought she could reject me emotionally and still expect me to be the provider. That night the house felt different. No shouting, no shattered plates, no movie-style confrontations. Just heavy silence. She sat on the couch with her phone again, and I didn't even glance at her. I went to the table, sorted through some bills, and quietly made a mental list of what had to change. And it wasn't about money. I could have given her $300, $500, even $1,000 without sweating. It was principle. I wasn't going to let her keep treating me like a resource she tapped into while giving me nothing in return. The hypocrisy was glaring. She could deny me when I reached for affection, then expect me to step up financially without shame. That double standard was over. When I finally went to bed, she stayed in the living room longer than usual. Sulking, maybe texting a friend about how cheap I had become. I didn't care. For the first time in a long while, something inside me shifted. Saying no wasn't merely withholding money. It was reclaiming my self-respect. I knew she wouldn't let it slide. Melissa pushes until she gets what she wants. But deep down I had decided she wouldn't have me as her safety net anymore. The clash between her asking for money and my refusal was the crack that set everything in motion. It revealed how far we'd drifted and how blind I'd been. She thought she controlled the game. She didn't know I just changed the rules. I used to believe marriage rested on an unshakable foundation. Trust, respect, intimacy, partnership. Sitting in my kitchen days after that exchange, staring at a woman who barely looked at me unless she needed something, I realized that foundation had been cracked long ago. I just refused to see it. Melissa and I weren't always like this. At the start, we were inseparable. We met at a friend's party, and from that first night there was an instant spark. She had a laugh that filled the room and a way of looking at me that made me feel like the center of her world. Back then she wanted me for me, not just what I could provide. We'd stay up until sunrise talking about everything. Our dreams, travel plans, how we'd raise kids, the home we wanted. Those nights felt endless and full of promise. I remember our first tiny apartment, barely room for a couch and a bed, but we didn't care. We ate cheap takeout on the floor and imagined the day we'd laugh about how hard things seemed then. She used to hug me from behind while I cooked and kiss my neck when I washed dishes. Those moments mattered more than anything. But somewhere along the way things shifted. Not suddenly, slowly, like a candle burning down until the room goes dark. At first there were excuses. Too tired for intimacy, falling asleep on the couch night after night claiming she was watching TV. I brushed it off. Work stress, hormones, a phase. I told myself every couple goes through dips. The truth was harsher. She was pulling away, piece by piece. Looking back, the signs were obvious. The phone that never left her hand, smiling at texts but rarely at me, girls' nights multiplying. I tried to ignore it, to believe she was still the woman who once couldn't wait to be close. But pretending the truth didn't exist only prolonged the damage. What hurt most wasn't only the lack of intimacy, it was how transactional everything became. Melissa stopped seeing me as her husband and started seeing me as her provider. The only time she seemed engaged was when she wanted something. Money for clothes, nails, trips with friends. And like a fool, I kept handing it over, thinking easing her life would bring her back to me. But the more I gave, the less she respected me. That became crystal clear after she told me to use my hand one night and then ask for money the next day. Those two moments were linked. She'd stopped offering what a wife should share with her husband: affection, love, closeness, yet felt no shame demanding cash as her due. I started replaying memories, connecting dots I'd ignored for years. I remembered how when we dated she said she admired my work ethic and ambition, how she loved that I wanted stability. But maybe she loved the security that came with it more than she loved me as a person. Maybe I'd confused admiration for effort with true love. The worst part was I enabled it. Every time I pulled out my wallet instead of insisting on respect, I reinforced that money was all I was good for. I can't blame her entirely. I was part of the problem. I noticed the imbalance everywhere. When was the last time she cooked for us without a sigh? When did she last ask about my day with real interest, not rote routine? When did she last hug me without expecting something? I couldn't remember. Our marriage had turned into a business deal where I was the only one paying. One night, sitting alone in the bedroom while Melissa laughed on the phone in the living room, I realized I missed respect more than physical intimacy. The sex, the hugs, the kisses mattered, but what broke me was being treated like disposable in my own home. I remembered my father's warning before I married: "Son, a woman can fall out of love, but if she stops respecting you, it's over." I didn't get it then. I thought respect and love were the same. Now, staring at the empty side of my bed, I finally understood. Love can fade. Respect should never vanish. Without respect, you don't have a partner. You have a leech. From that moment, I stopped seeing Melissa through rose-colored lenses. I saw her as someone who valued my money more than my presence, who believed being a wife meant she could reject me emotionally while expecting me to fund her life. The hypocrisy didn't stop there. I began noticing small things that painted an uglier picture. She complained about how hard staying at home was, yet refused to get a job. She wanted freedom without responsibility, the perks of marriage without the duties of being a wife. Everything became clear when I stopped excusing her behavior. Our marriage was exposed as a contract she assumed I couldn't walk away from. But she was wrong. That realization didn't make me sad so much as resolute. I wasn't going to beg for respect or plead for intimacy or attention. If she thought I existed only to finance her lifestyle, she was about to feel what it was like when that safety net vanished. I'd reached a point where my silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. I didn't need to scream or list her failures. Life would teach her in a brutal, efficient way. For the first time in years, I felt clear-headed. This wasn't about salvaging the marriage anymore. It was about saving myself. Revenge doesn't always require fire and noise. Often the coldest moves are the most effective. After years of giving without getting, after being humiliated by the woman who was supposed to respect me, I decided not to fight the way she expected. No shouting matches, no desperate pleas, no messy arguments about what went wrong. My revenge would be simple. I would cut her off from the things she valued most: my money and my attention. It began quietly. I announced nothing. I simply stopped being her provider. Melissa came a few days after the $300 request and asked for a smaller amount, $80, saying she needed it for groceries. In the past, I'd have handed it over without thinking. This time I took out my debit card, placed it on the counter, and said flatly, "Here, buy what we need for the house. Nothing else." Her face twisted with annoyance, but she took the card. Later, when she returned, I checked the receipt. For the first time in our marriage, I examined each line. Hidden between bread and milk were charges for cosmetics and overpriced candles. I said nothing, but I took the card back and locked it in my desk. From then on, I handled the grocery shopping myself. Step 1. Control the money. Step 2. Control the time. Melissa had grown used to me dropping everything to be home when she wanted, prioritizing her needs. I redirected that energy toward myself. I picked up extra hours at work, not for the cash, but to create distance. I went back to the gym, something I'd abandoned in the grind. I reconnected with old friends and started grabbing beers after work instead of rushing home to a woman who barely noticed me. When Melissa noticed, she didn't react much at first. She tried passive-aggressive lines. "You're working late a lot. What, you don't like being home anymore?" I just shrugged. I go where I feel respected. She hated that answer, but didn't press. Step 3 was attention, or rather, withholding it. Melissa thrived on being the center of my world, expecting me to notice new clothes, hair changes, or freshly painted nails. I used to give those compliments automatically. Now, silence. She could walk in with a new dress and I wouldn't look up from my laptop. She could spend hours on makeup before a night out and I wouldn't offer a single word. That silence drove her crazier than I expected. She began fishing for validation. "Notice anything different?" she'd ask. I'd glance up casually. then go back to what I was doing. No. It was cruel, but deliberate. If she wanted to treat me like an ATM, I'd treat her like a stranger. The cracks started to show. Melissa wasn't prepared for this version of me. She'd grown accustomed to controlling the rhythm of our life, to having me wrapped around her finger, always eager to please, always ready to provide. But I had changed, more detached, composed, and laser-focused. And the colder I became, the more unsettled she got. One Saturday night, she tried to reassert her old dominance. She dressed up, told me she was going out with her friends, and lingered by the door waiting for me to ask where she was headed. I didn't ask. I said, "Don't forget your keys," and went back to watching the game. When she returned later that night, she pushed again, snapping, "You didn't even ask who I was with." I met her gaze and said flatly, "Why would I? You've made it clear I'm not part of your plans." That response shut her down. My cold response wasn't meant to punish her with drama. It was meant to make her live with the consequence of her actions. Every look she gave me now, at the man she dismissed, was a reminder that I refused to play along, and it ate away at her confidence. And the thing that hit her hardest was practical. She started feeling it financially. With me controlling the money, the easy life she'd built began to vanish. No more spontaneous shopping sprees. No more salon visits charged to my account. No more vacations with her friends on my dime. When she complained, I gave the same answer every time. "You want money? Get a job. I'm not your bank." The more I repeated it, the more furious she became. She labeled me controlling, stingy, even abusive. But deep down she knew the reality. I wasn't cutting her off from the essentials. Bills were paid, the house stayed in order, food remained on the table. I only stopped funding the extras she assumed she deserved simply because she wore a ring. And watching her unravel had its own dark satisfaction. At first she tried to act tough, slamming doors, rolling her eyes, muttering insults under her breath. When none of that made me budge, she changed tactics. Suddenly she wanted affection again. She'd sit close on the couch, rest a hand on my leg, try to kiss me goodnight. I didn't refuse her outright. Denying her completely would have handed her power and proved I still cared. Instead, I let indifference do the work. I let her kiss me, and then I turned back to whatever I was doing. No passion, no spark, just emptiness. That void hurt her more than any argument could. Weeks into this quiet campaign, she finally lost it. One night she shouted, "You've changed. You're not the man I married." I looked at her calmly and replied, "No, Melissa. I'm finally the man I should have been all along. The one who doesn't tolerate disrespect." That line was the nail in the coffin. My revenge wasn't about screaming or public humiliation. It was about taking back control and proving the man she thought she could walk over was gone. I had become someone who valued self-respect over her comfort. In the end, the revenge served more than me. It was a lesson she couldn't ignore. Treat a man like an object and don't be surprised when he stops being there for you. And the irony was brutal. The colder I got, the more she wanted me back, but by then it was too late. Regret doesn't explode into a single moment. It seeps in slowly like water through cracks until it drowns everything. For Melissa, it began in small, subtle signs. She noticed me dressing sharper before leaving the house, wearing cologne I hadn't used in years. She saw me back at the gym, losing the weight I'd piled on from stress. She heard me laugh on the phone with coworkers and friends, voices full of energy she hadn't heard from me in a long time. The man she had dismissed, mocked, and treated like a walking bank was coming back to life. Only this time he wasn't coming back for her. At first she tried guilt. "You don't spend time with me anymore." I shrugged. "You didn't want my time when I offered it." Then she tried affection, wrapping her arms around me in the kitchen, whispering in my ear like years ago, but the spark was gone. I'd smile politely, move her hands away, and return to what I was doing. She felt the emptiness and the distance that no amount of forced sweetness could bridge. Finally, she tried desperation. One night she collapsed into tears. "I don't want to lose you. I know I've been selfish. I know I push you away. Please, give me another chance." Her tears didn't move me. Years earlier they might have. Back then I would have wrapped her up, promised everything would be okay, and buried my own pain to keep the marriage alive. But this time I saw what those tears really were. Fear, not love. Fear of losing the comfort and stability she expected. The man she assumed would always be there no matter how badly she behaved. I looked into her eyes and said, "Melissa, you told me to use my hand when I wanted to be with you." Something inside me broke that night. You can't unring that bell. You can't erase the disrespect. I refused to spend my life begging for scraps of love from my own wife. She sobbed harder and clutched my arm like I might disappear if she let go. But when she whispered, "But I love you," I shook my head and said, "No, you love the life I gave you. You don't love me." Then I walked out of the room. That was the beginning of her collapse. I kept living with discipline and focus, working harder, but for myself, not for her. I started saving aggressively, investing, planning a future where I didn't carry dead weight. My friends noticed and told me, "Man, you look different, happier." Not because I'd found someone new, but because I'd found myself again. Melissa, meanwhile, unraveled. Cut off from the financial perks she'd counted on, her lifestyle crumbled. She had to curb shopping, cancel spa days, and stop going out as often. She became tired, stressed, bitter, and her complaints lost their power over me. The cruel irony was that as she faded, I came alive. Women noticed me again at the gym, at work, even in the grocery store. Simple chats turned into smiles, and for the first time in years I felt desirable again. Melissa noticed too. One night she saw me texting and snapped, "Who's that?" I didn't bother hiding it. Someone who actually enjoys talking to me. Her face said it all. Panic, jealousy, regret. She knew she had lost control. But I wasn't interested in petty revenge through cheating or games. My revenge was my transformation, my rise. She'd gambled by demeaning me, assuming I'd always stick around no matter how low she dragged me, and she lost that bet the moment I stopped playing by her rules. Months later I met someone new, Claire. She was intelligent, kind, independent, everything Melissa had stopped being years before. Claire didn't see me as a wallet or a provider. She saw me as a man. We talked for hours, laughed at small things, and when she touched me it wasn't obligation, it was desire. I didn't hide Claire from Melissa. I didn't flaunt her, but I kept no secrets. When Melissa saw us together the first time I could see her face crumble. She tried to hide it, but regret was written all over her. She realized the man she dismissed was now wanted, appreciated, and loved by someone better. That was the final nail in her coffin. She tried one last time to claw back in, cornering me in the kitchen and whispering, "She'll never love you like I do." I laughed and shook my head. "You're right, she won't. She respects me. Something you never did." Melissa's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No pity, no remorse. Her regret couldn't change the fact she treated me like a stranger in my own home, denied me intimacy, and used me as a bank. Now she was left with the ruins of a life she assumed was secure, while I rebuilt mine stronger than before. And that's the thing about regret. It's always too late. She had her chance when I was devoted, loyal, ready to give her everything, and she threw it away. By the time she understood what she'd lost, I'd already moved on and risen past the man she tried to break. So when people ask if I regret leaving her, my answer is simple. No. The only regret in this story belongs to her.